Hello students, welcome to this program titled Indian Universities Commission 1902. The objectives set for the present program are to know about the Indian Universities Commission 1902, to know its purpose, to know about the recommendations of the Commission, to analyze its achievements, and to become familiar with the features of the period from 1902 to 1921. Let's begin with history and background of the Commission. Lord Curzon was appointed as Governor General of India in 1899. He was well educated, efficient, and bold. During his viceroyalty, he brought reforms in administration and showed keen interest for the development of education in British India. Education was reviewed very critically and steps were taken to improve the various branches of the same. He had a view that there was no change in university education because the universities had not followed the guidelines of London University. For the first time, the Chancellor asked the university to consider the possibility of constitutional reform. In March, a strong representation of the need for inquiry and action was made by a number of professors and heads of colleges. In September 1901, a conference was held at Shimla, which was attended by a few selected educationists and the provincial directors of public instruction. It was a preliminary survey of the whole educational field. On 27th of January 1902, the Indian University Commission was appointed on the instructions of Lord Curzon. Inquiries continued through February, March, and April, and their reports was published in June. One of the first results of Shimla Conference was the appointment of Indian University Commission under the chairmanship of Thomas Railly. The other members included were Justice Gurudas Banerjee, A.G. Bourne, J.P. Hivath, A. Padler, D. Mekichan, and Said Hussain Bigram. There were three important reasons for the appointment of the commission. First, the defects of university education were very glaring and nothing had been done to remodel the Indian universities since they were established, and the matter was left untouched by the Indian Education Commission of 1882. Secondly, the London University, which had served as a model to Indian universities, was reorganized in 1898. Hence, it was considered worthwhile to go into the various aspects of university education in India. Third, the Conference of Educationists in 1901 had made several recommendations. The Commission's recommendations on university education have been regarded merely as, quote, rehabilitation and the strengthening of existing system, unquote. Now we will discuss the objectives of the Commission. To inquire into the conditions and prospects of the universities established in British India, to consider and report upon any proposals which have been or may be made for improving their constitution and working, and to recommend the Governor General in Council such measures that may tend to elevate the standards of university teaching and thereby promote the advancement of learning. Now let's talk about the recommendations of the Commission. So many recommendations were put forth by the Commission for the improvement of the university standards. Some of the major recommendations among them are: first, Adoption of University of London as a model. The model of the London University as modified in 1898 had some features. Every university ought to be a teaching university. Teachers must always be intimately associated with the government of the university. And the supreme governing body of the university was its Senate, which should not be too large. Teaching universities. The legal powers of the older universities should be enlarged so that all the universities may be recognized as the teaching bodies. Undergraduates should be left to the colleges, but the universities may make better provision for advanced courses of study and may appoint their own lecturers, provide libraries and laboratories, and see that residential quarters are maintained for students from a distance. Now, reorganization of Senate and Syndicate. The Senate, the authority by which fellows are appointed, should be empowered to nominate a new state. The new governing body should be recruited mainly or partly from the existing fellows, but the number should not exceed a maximum to be fixed by the rule. There should be in each university a faculty of arts representing language, philosophy, and history, and a faculty of science representing the observational and experimental sciences. The proportionate numbers to be assigned to the several faculties need not to be the same in all cases. When 100 is the maximum, then the suitable distribution would be arts 30, science, law, and medicine 20 each, and engineering 10. The permission to elect fellows has been conceded to certain graduates in the 3 older universities, and the provision in the Act of Incorporation of each of the 2 junior universities for the election of fellows by the Senate should be retained and confirmed by statute. The constituent authority should be empowered to appoint the new Senate a suitable number of existing elected fellows, not exceeding 1/10 of the whole, and it should be arranged that fellows of this class shall vacate their places in such a way as to secure regular annual elections for the future. Power may be taken to introduce election by the Senate in the old universities or election by graduates at Allahabad and Lahore. Appointments to the new senates should be for 5 years. In each year, 1/5 of the appointed and elected fellows should vacate their places. All appointments should be made on the clear understanding that the person appointed undertakes to attend the meeting of the Senate. The travelling expenses of members residing at a distance should be paid. The Senate should be so composed as to give due weightage to the opinion of university and college teachers, especially heads of the college, representative members of the learned professions, and representatives of the government. Now, the syndicate. The rule which prevails at Calcutta and Madras that no fellow is eligible to be a member of the syndicate unless he resides in or near the university town should be abrogated. The syndicate should not be a large body. The minimum number may be placed at 9, including the vice-chancellor, and the maximum at 15. The syndicate should be elected by the Senate. The syndicate should be recognized by the law as the executive authority of the university, and some of its power should be exercised independently of the Senate. Teaching faculties. There should be a proper representation of the teachers and the scholars of the affiliated colleges in the university senate. It's not necessary to insist on uniformity on the arrangements of the faculties. If arts and science be separated, there will be the 5 faculties of arts, science, law, medicine, and engineering. Now coming to the Board of Studies. The Senate, subject to the proper values of nomination and election, should appoint such boards of studies as it thinks necessary from among its own members. No book should be recommended by a board unless on the written report of some competent persons who has read it. Questions relating to examination papers may be referred to the board. Governing bodies and teaching staff of colleges. There should be a proper constituted governing body for each college. The teaching staff must be educated to the course of study to be undertaken. Rules for affiliation. New affiliation rules should be so framed for each university as to secure that no university shall be admitted to affiliation unless an independent report is presented by the Director of Public Instruction or some other competent authority, showing why the new institution is required and what are the guarantees for the financial stability. Secondly, that no institution once admitted to affiliation be allowed to fall below the standard of efficiency required for affiliation. The syndicate should satisfy itself from time to time on this point. In most cases, information will be procurable from the Director of Public Instruction, and it will not be necessary for the university to appoint an inspector or board of inspectors, but members of the syndicate should make it a practice to visit the college within their jurisdiction. The syndicate should have power to order a formal inspection of an affiliated college at any time. Moving to course of study, affiliation should be granted and from time to time renewed, not in general terms but with more exact reference to the subjects and courses of study for which the college can make adequate provisions. The points that should be kept into consideration are whether the college can provide an adequate number of lecturers, whether the college provides its students with adequate tutorial assistance, whether the students have access to an library and to laboratories, etc., wherever it's required. Now, English and the other languages. English as a second language should be made compulsory throughout the courses. Wherever possible, graduates with honors on the English side should be appointed lecturers and they should be required to prepare their courses for publication. Vernaculars were to be encouraged up to MA level and classical languages were to be studied for good mental training. General scheme of examination. The previous system of examination should be abolished. The standards of the matriculation should be raised. There should be uniformity in the nomenclature of the examinations and degrees in arts and science at different universities. Now about the fees and scholarships. 2 primary considerations should be observed in the settlement of fees. Firstly, there must not be pinched so higher as to check the spread of education, and secondly, that they must not be fixed so low as to tempt a poor student of ordinary ability to follow a university course which is not his real interest. Scholarships should be provided by the state to really able but poor students to encourage them for higher education. About infrastructure, the syndicates should use every effort to ensure that the affiliated colleges are decently and suitably housed and that there is adequate provision for the health and comfort of the students. Where space permits, the principal and some of the professors should reside quite near or in the college. Colleges and their surroundings should be made more dignified and more attractive than in many cases they are. Now, about the residence of students. Students should be required to reside with parents or guardians in lodgings approved by the university or by the college to which they belong, or in a hostel with may be defined as a place suitable for the residence of students and under university of college supervision. One or more of the members of the college staff should reside in a quite near the hostel. If it is not possible to give each student a room to himself, the sleeping rooms should be large dormitories which are more easily controlled than cubicles holding 2 or 3 students. Hostels attached to a college should be directly under the control of the principal. Now, the local limits of the universities. The local limits of each university should be more accurately defined than the now one. Steps should be taken to remove from the Calcutta list the affiliated colleges in the central provinces, the United Provinces, the Punjab, etc. The central provinces and the central India should be assigned to Allahabad. The colleges of Ceylon, which sent candidates to Calcutta, should be transferred to Madras. Unless the colonial authorities are prepared to make more suitable provision for their needs. The arrangements under which the Punjab government hold university examinations at Lucknow should be reconsidered. If a college situated within the local limits of a university desires for any special reason to apply for affiliation in another university, its application should be addressed in the first instance to the local university, and the application should not be granted unless the consent of both syndicate and the sanction of the Government of India. Now, about the proposals for new universities. The question of creating new universities should be postponed until the changes now proposed in the constitution and the working of existing university have been tested by experience. Transfer of students. No transfer should be permitted in the middle of a term or indeed in the middle of a course of study unless for special reasons to be recorded in writing by the college authorities and reported to the syndicate. In case of government and aided institutions, the education department can make and enforce proper transfer rules. If the university is satisfied with the government rules, it should require unaided affiliated institutions to observe them as a condition of their affiliation. Fees should be paid terminally in advance, and the question of amount, if any, to be refunded on the transfer of a student should be decided by the college. Now about the college and school. When a college is connected with a high school, the college classes should be conducted in a separate building and under separate management. About university funds, the principal should be recognized that if the universities are to incur additional expenditure in order to improve the education of their students, it's not unreasonable that they should charge higher fees. Each university should consider how far it can, by means of the resources already at its disposal and, by raising its fees, find funds for new expenditure. The scale on which the government support and aids the college may be reconsidered in the view of increased expenditure, to which the acceptance of the foregoing recommendations must lead. Unless by government aid or otherwise the financial position of the universities can be materially strengthened, the prospect of any thorough change for the better must be indefinitely postponed. Regarding college managing committees, a managing committee for every college, which besides managing the college concerned, should also appoint competent teachers and pay attention towards the discipline of the students and the construction of buildings, hostels, etc. University reform was initiated, as we have seen, in Bengal and was directed by its initiators to the circumstances of Calcutta University. It was a debatable point whether the other universities needed reform for analogous reason. The Commission came to the conclusion that they did and recommended reform on similar lines in respect of constitution, examination, courses of study, standards, social life. The publication of the report called forth an outburst of criticism. These two provisions, though educationally very weighty reason can be given for their expediency, were associated with special vehemence. Government gave way to the popular outcry on these 2 points and announced their omission from the scheme of reform. Now we will discuss the achievements of the Indian Universities Commission 1902. The main achievement of the Commission was that the administration of the universities became more efficient. The senates of the reorganized universities were more manageable and efficient than earlier ones. On the whole, it raised the tone of university administration. The strict conditions of affiliation and the arrangements for periodical inspection made it difficult for new colleges to spring into the existence and even led to the elimination of a number of weak institutions. Hopes for improvement in collegiate instruction were largely fulfilled. The third achievement was that the Indian universities received their first grants from the Government of India. Lord Curzon was the first person to give importance on organizing agriculture education. He brought many reforms to the system. He introduced agriculture as a subject of study at school stage, established the departments of agriculture, created Central Research Institute at Pune, and laid down the principle that every important province in India must have its own agriculture college, which should be properly staffed and equipped. Further, schools of art were reformed which had failed in their primary object of promoting Indian art. Curzon directed that the schools should be continued with certain modifications in their subjects, methods, and organization. Although the missionaries tried to incorporate religious influence in education, Lord Curzon rejected the idea and expressed that, quote, in government institutions, the institution is and must continue to be exclusively secular, unquote. Curzon found that the ancient monuments of India were not properly being cared for and therefore created a special department for the purpose. He also passed the Ancient Monument Preservation Act of 1904. Scholarships in large numbers for sending Indian students abroad for technological studies were sanctioned. The necessity of technical education in India had been felt by Lord Curzon for developing Indian industries. one of the greatest contributions of Lord Curzon in the field of Indian education was to create the post of Director General of Education in India. Now we will discuss the features of the period from 1902 to 1921. The period of about 20 years between the appointment of the Indian Universities Commission in 1902 and the transfer of the education to Indian control in 1921 form the fourth period in the history of modern Indian education. As compared with the Victorian era, it presents several distinctive features, which includes: first, larger finances available for education. A good and stable system of financial relations between the central and provincial governments existed throughout the period. This encouraged better collection of revenue and greater vigilance in expenditure. With the result, the resources of the central and provincial governments improved considerably and enabled them to provide larger finances for education. The second source of additional finance was that of central grants to education. This was a period of boom in the world of finance, and India shared in the general prosperity. Trade and commerce increased considerably and led a great increase in central revenues, an event which in turn led to the substantial surpluses in the central budgets. The third reason for the large finances that became available for the education during this period was an all-round improvement in the provincial, local and private contribution to education. The finances of the provincial governments improved and hence they increased their contribution to education. The local boards and municipalities also shared in the general prosperity and assigned larger grants to education than before. The increase in the number of students brought in a much larger income from fees, and the general awakening among the people was responsible for increasing the receipts under the miscellaneous head endowments, donations, subscriptions, etc. It will thus be seen that this was a period when the total finance available for education increased very considerably. Second, more active role of the state. Under the lead given by Lord Curzon, the doctrine of state withdrawal was officially abandoned, and it was considered the duty of the state to maintain a few institutions of every type as models to the private enterprise. The inspecting staff was strengthened, and a vigilant policy of inspection and supervision of private schools was adapted in the old policy of laissez-faire. The attempts made in England at that time to improve the quality of education made the departmental officials in India feel that they too should make similar attempts and control private enterprises more strictly with a view to raising the standards. Thirdly, the growing political consciousness among the educated people made the British officials feel a little concerned. Next, efforts at qualitative improvement. Between 1854 and 1902, the principal objective of educational policy had been expansion rather than quality improvement. The assumption of official policy was that some schools was better than no school. But this outlook was entirely changed by the initiative taken by Lord Curzon. He started a drive for qualitative reform. It was not pointed out in a survey of educational results between the period 1854 and 1902 that education had not materially advanced in quantity but had definitely deteriorated in quality. It was this analysis of educational position that made Curzon to start a drive for qualitative reform. At the secondary and collegiate stage, Indian Opinion demanded the widest possible expansion on voluntary basis. But here Curzon definitely preferred to curtail numbers and improve quality. On a whole, the official view as represented here by Lord Curzon stood for quality rather than for quantity. The growth of a militant nationalism among the people. The spirit of nationalism was slowly growing between 1885 and 1902 under a surface of general loyalty to British rule and was about to burst into a storm at the close of 19th century. The viceroyalty of Lord Curzon provided the immediate cause of this outburst. With all his great intellectual powers, infinite capacity for work, strong sense of duty, intense desire to serve the people of India, and magnificent achievement in almost all fields of administration, Curzon nevertheless wounded the educated intelligentsia beyond hope of reconciliation. Remarks such as these, which were derogatory to the nation as whole, could not be taken lying down, and the intelligentsia protested. These protests made Curzon angry because he never really learned to understand or tolerate opposition, and he came out with still more sarcastic remarks which made the position worse than before. And so the battle went on till the educated classes of the country opposed him and developed a spirit of nationalism which militated against the British rule itself. To conclude, on 27th of January 1902, the Indian Universities Commission was appointed under the chairmanship of Thomas Raleigh. Purpose of this commission was to help Lord Curzon to inquire into the conditions and prospects of the universities established in British India, improving their constitution and working, and to recommend the Governor General in Council such measures as may tend to elevate the standards of university teaching and thereby promote the advancement of learning. Adoption of University of London as a model was the main recommendation of the Commission. The Commission not only contributed but strengthened the then existing system of affiliated universities. During his days, every aspect of education received keen attention, and it was Lord Curzon who started the movement for educational reconstruction in India. He laid the foundation of the reforms of Indian universities and tried to raise the standard of Indian higher education. He recognized the responsibility of education by the central government. Standard of secondary education was also raised through rigid and regular inspection and stricter conditions of recognition. Due to his patronage, expansion of primary education was striking. Technical and vocational education received impetus in his hands. Reforms were also introduced in agriculture education. Department of Agriculture was established and arrangement was made for agriculture research. His attempt to preserve the ancient monuments of India and creation of a department of archaeology was praiseworthy. The achievements have ever continued, and needless to say, Lord Curzon, who started the system of government grants to universities in 1904, has ultimately improved the standards of higher education in India. This is all for today. Hope you have enjoyed and understood. Thank you for watching.